Hey everyone, welcome to episode 20 of Cloud Conversations with Rue and Pete. Joined as always by Pete. I'm Rue. Pete, how are you doing?
Hey Rue, I am indeed Pete, as Rue has said, and I'm very, very well indeed. It's all is good. How are you today, Rue? All well with you?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, I just realised, we're 20 episodes in, and if I still have to say that you're Pete and I'm Rue, then we're doing something wrong. But in any event, I'll hand over to you to introduce our amazing guest.
Yeah. So, if you are introducing each other, what if somebody's just watching episode 20?
Exactly.
That's true.
Exactly.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of like the news, isn't it? Every time you clock in, you watch the news at 6 o'clock. They'll say, "Hi, I'm la 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 la."
You got it. You are now. You're a professional now because you have an introduction.
This is it. That's something we do need, though. We do need an intro video with graphics and all that stuff.
We don't have that yet, no, but we'll get around to it. We're just so busy people. But we will get to that. But anyway, I do, as Rue said, have the pleasure and privilege of introducing our wonderful guest this week. It's Azure McFarlane. So how are you, Azure? Are you well?
I am doing pretty well today. Thanks for asking. My parents are coming in and out of the house, so you might see Mama and Papa Cloud in the background or something.
Cool.
But yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks.
Mama
Amazing.
Cloud. Love it.
I love that. That's so cool. So cool. So Azure, you are a bioprocess engineer turned data scientist working in the pharmaceuticals industry.
Mm-hmm.
And you're based in Maryland in the United States. And you work mainly with Power Automate, I believe, for GSK. And also in the wider Microsoft community. So a very, very warm welcome. Would you just introduce yourself a bit more and tell us a little bit about your journey today?
Sure. So like you said, I'm Azure. I would say, newer to the Power Automate community. I started in December 2019. And I don't know what else to say. I really love the platform. The community's been so welcoming. My favorite food is potatoes. See,
cool.
Even when I've done this thing, I don't. The introduction still eludes me sometimes too.
I like it that the most important thing to take away from that is we like potatoes.
We like potatoes.
You're in good company.
I guess it's
who doesn't like potatoes?
No, they are the perfect food, right? Breakfast, lunch, or dinner. There is such a variety of things that you can do with them. So I think as the most versatile food, potatoes it is.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you have your own garden? Do you plant them yourself, or just go out and buy them?
No, I don't. You know what? There's a meme or something that's with Paula Deen. It's oh, if you can't make your own, store-bought is fine. That's me. Store-bought is fine for potatoes. So.
Excellent. So just a fan, not a producer, a fan.
Just a fan. Yeah, I don't grow anything yet. I have basil, but I have a small backyard. I bought a house a couple months ago, so I would like to plant things, but I have to figure out what grows in the climate here. I'm not sure if potatoes is it.
Nice. Yep.
Yeah.
I've been to Maryland. The climate is for a Scottish person like me, it gets quite humid and quite hot.
Yeah, already. So my AC is currently broken, and upstairs it's 85 degrees in my office. So I had to relocate temporarily. So hopefully it'll be fixed soon. But yeah.
That's unbearable.
Yeah. Welcome to Maryland. That's it.
That's funny. I was just going to ask what the climate was like there, and Rue answered it. I didn't expect the answer to come from Rue, but I'm going to bet, Rue, that you went there to see wrestling, yeah?
I went there to a music festival called the Maryland Death Fest. So that tells you all you need to know about me. That's it.
Cool.
And it was quite funny because I'd be walking through Baltimore, and I'd go to a shop, and I'd buy something at the shop, I'd buy a souvenir or something like that, and I'd be fully kitted out in a metal t-shirt and cargo trousers and stuff. And the guy at the other side, he'd say, "I take it you're here for the Death Fest." And I was like, what gave it away?
Wait,
was it the zombie on the t-shirt or the long hair? Yeah. No, it was great over there. Loved it over there. It's a nice place.
Beautiful here. Yeah, I like it. I'll be here for at least a little bit unless work takes me elsewhere. I'm happy to relocate. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff. And so I guess, speaking about work, how did you kind of make that leap? Because you started as a kind of bioprocess engineer, moved into, I guess, the Microsoft tech world. One thing we found when we're having these shows with everyone is a lot of folk, they don't start with tech as the kind of end goal. They just stumble their way into it. So how did that happen for you?
I guess I'm just like everybody else. My background's in biochemistry. Graduated with my undergrad degree in biochemistry and started working in the pharmaceutical industry. Kind of fell into that too. I had thought I was going to be going to med school and was like, I kind of need a break from studying from the entrance exam. Decided to start working, and I've been in the industry really ever since. Mainly focused around like manufacturing activities. So I've worked for a couple of different companies. At this point, all centered around like manufacturing drugs that are biologics. So they are live drugs made from antibodies that work with your immune system. And so I went from working as a manufacturing technician to designing the manufacturing processes to then doing kind of like technical support for manufacturing, like having the technical advice plus doing some project management, and then now data science. I had been in my previous role as a bioprocess engineer for about 3 years and kind of knew that wasn't going to be my end goal, but really didn't know what else I wanted to do. And I took a Flow in a Day class that our data science team, they had brought Microsoft to our site to take this course. And that's how that's how I got started. So I wouldn't have known about the platform elsewhere. And I had some free time on my hands, took the Flow in a Day course, fell in love, and it was love at first flow. So
nicely done. Yeah. So I guess, as far as I'm not a Power Automate or a Power Platform person. If someone's kind of interested in it and they don't have Microsoft coming to their business and telling them here's what to do, how easy is it to get started? Is there any license or anything associated, or can you just pick it up and play it?
You can pick it up and play. Although I did see an announcement on Twitter, and I think it might be separate from what I'm thinking. I didn't get to look into it too deeply, but you can get like a developer license, which is a free trial. You get to play around with it. So it doesn't matter if your organization has it or not. If you get a developer license, you can start with Power Automate there. And make it very easy. Like you just sign up with your email address, and then you get a trial for, I think it's 60 days. And then as long as you're using this tenant, it'll be renewed for you. So you don't even have to worry about it. Yeah, you just can't use it like in production for work, but it's to give you access to things that you wouldn't normally have access to. And then if like your company has it, like my company, we just have basic like licenses, no premium at the time, then you can start there too. So
awesome.
Pretty easy.
Good stuff. And I guess, it's if you're coming from that pharmaceutical background, that's quite a in-demand industry at the minute for obvious reasons. That's not going anywhere anytime soon. How do you what kinds of things do you then take that the business needs and you can then fix with Power Automate?
So I guess there's like two different sides to Power Automate. I would say or maybe like two different needs. Like we have business needs, so business critical needs, and then there's these process improvements. So there are things like, for example, I created a flow to pull some data from an external client that we're working with, and it needs to be in a local copy of an Excel sheet so we can use it in another data trending software. And that's like a business like need for my site. But then there's also process improvement things where it's like, oh, we need, I don't know, reminders for, planner tasks when somebody generates, facilitator generates a meeting invite, and I need it to attach all the attachments to this task and assign everybody in the team, like, my functional group, this particular thing. So I guess there's two different sides, and the priority is focused on business critical needs, because my team, we're data scientists, and so we don't really have a team that purely builds Power Automate things. I'm the SME, so it's when I have the time to focus on some of these peripheral things, I like to do that too, because it's a big help. But first and foremost is always like, okay, what needs to happen first to keep manufacturing going, or that would make their jobs easier, empty this time off their hands, and so that they can focus more on what they actually have to do.
Awesome, good stuff. And do you find that, is it the kind of thing that, do you have like a kind of dedicated Power Automate platform? Are you the go-to person in that, or do you find that it's so easy to adopt that other folks can kind of pick it up and run with it too. I'm just wondering, how does adoption work within the company for it?
So we've had, as a global company, we've had the platform for I think 3 or 4 years now, and it didn't start becoming a little bit more popular, known, widely used until last year, maybe year before last. So we've got like an internal Power Platform community, like an internal Facebook group, the Power Platform Rangers. And so people can go there for help if they want to get started. We're about 3,000 strong. I would say I was a little bit of a maniac when it came to Power Automate. So I was spending my off hours like learning how to use the platform, which, you know, it became personal development for me outside of working hours even. And that's not what we quite like encourage employees to do, right? Because like, oh, this is still kind of technically work, but I loved it so much, like I wanted to learn more. So I don't, depending on what people want to accomplish, it may not just be easy to jump in if they want like, oh, I don't know, some complicated like approval process with different panels and whatnot. It may not be possible to learn that on your own right away. Templates make part of this easy, but some of the requests that I'm seeing coming in, people are like, I don't know how to proceed from here. And then that's when I would come in and be like, yes, this is not something you would probably know right off the fly. You know, I'll have to think about how to do this and then, you know, translate that knowledge to them or help them build it out. So I think it depends. If you want something basic, like, oh, I want a notification. For me, what one that I have is when somebody mentions me in an email, send me a message in Teams, send me a chat message in Teams, and then give me the body of the email, like all the details from the email, and then allow me to reply all, or just do nothing. And that one would be like, oh, okay, that one might be a straightforward one. But for example, like I'd say my one trick pony example that I always give is we have a safety team, and they have needed to keep track of the safety incidences that happen. Like as a manufacturing site, we've got, you know, a couple of plants going on. So it's imperative that they know exactly what's going on, and then, you know, having people fill out their paperwork accordingly once an incident happens. And for them, there's no central tracking system quite yet. GSK is building one out. So I created a system of notification, like, you know, when somebody submits something in SharePoint, notifications is sent to, you know, a manager, their manager and the employee. It's an approval. So once they finish all this paperwork, which the flow like copies a template, renames it to something else just for their specific incident, drops it in Teams, sends, you know, this approval out. When it's complete, please press done. It notifies the safety team. It updates the status log. Like this kind of thing wouldn't be something that I would think a beginner would know how to do, and it would take some time. But something a little bit like more direct, like, oh, I want to know when, you know, something is changing in this, you know, status log or the SharePoint list, then that would be something to get in a little bit easier. But my thought is always go to the template section of Power Automate. There are so many templates, and see if there is somebody else has already had this idea that there's a template out there for you, and then you just cherry pick, like, I don't need this part, let me try inserting this instead, or just removing it completely. And then if you like, getting help is as simple as like a Google search, or, you know, reaching out on forums or Twitter, or, you know, whatever there's a wealth of knowledge. There are people who are a heck of a lot smarter than me. I like to joke, I was like, I like to consult people who are more adult than me to when I get stuck. So
that's fantastic.
It depends, right? It depends.
Yeah, you are a proper Microsoft community person. You really are, because you go off and learn it all, and community people like us, we are learn it alls. We want to have that information and assimilate it, and it's so wonderful when people do that. But do you remember the first flow that you ever created out of interest?
I do, yes. I do. So we have like in my old department, we had a standing muster in the mornings, Monday mornings, and the safety team would send out this PowerPoint slide that was the safety topic of the week. It could be electrical hazards, it could be heat exhaustion. And this was supposed to be reviewed at the musters for all of the functional groups at site. And the issue that we were running into was sometimes our muster was at 9:30 Monday mornings, but sometimes the safety team might not have gotten around until like 9:40 to do it, or they forgot to do it, or it was only sent to a manager's listserv. And so when we'd get to this muster and Monday mornings, it'd be like, did anybody receive the file? And so to cut down on that, I was like, I'm going to create a flow to copy and replace this file because it lived on SharePoint, on their SharePoint. And I was just going to have it drop it into our SharePoint, displayable in Teams, because that's where we run our muster out of, and do that. And I was working on this, and I told a colleague, I was like, I want to figure this out. So here's me on the way to a half marathon in another state with some friends in the back of their car, on having my mobile hotspot on, like trying to figure out how to build this flow because I was just that excited.
Oh, marvelous.
So that was my first flow.
That's awesome. It's such a good feeling though when you get your teeth into something and you become obsessed with it. It's so good. And everyone talks about work-life balance, but it kind of doesn't matter if you're having fun anyway. It's
exactly. And you're going to learn a ton of stuff because Power Automate, like all things in Microsoft 365, touches everything else. It touches Teams and Exchange Online and SharePoint and lists, everything you said like that. So you're going to learn tons of stuff along the way just by doing it.
And honestly, that's what I love. It's such a wide range of applications that nearly anything that somebody comes to me with, I'm like, we can do that. And I love the integration with all of the other Microsoft applications. And we know that this library of connectors keeps expanding. I know the last time I looked, we were just like south of 500, but it's ever expanding every day, which means that, if the connector isn't available yet, it's coming. And even when I'm playing around, I follow the Power Automate blog. They don't necessarily tell you like what specific connector has changes sometimes. And it's a nice surprise to go in and be like, oh, wow, they added this feature that I was looking for, like 6 months ago, and now I can actually do it. And it's wonderful. It always keeps me on my toes.
Is there anything that is kind of, again, speaking kind of outside looking and not being an expert in anything to do with the Power Platform, what's the kind of limits of it? So obviously if something doesn't have a connector, you can't really use that, but what's the kind of circumstance where someone says to you, I'm thinking about doing this? What are the kind of scenarios where you have to say, well, maybe Power Automate's not the right thing?
Ooh, I would say maybe licensing. So a standard license will give you, access to like Office 365 applications, but there may be something that requires more than the standard license. Thinking of things like connecting to, a SQL database. You want to use common data service. Dataverse is also considered premium at this point. If you want to have a parent flow called a child flow, that's premium. HTTP calls. So there are, in my space, our company has been renegotiating licenses with Microsoft. And as soon as I got a premium license, they're like, oh, don't use it anymore. Like, don't create any new flows. We're in talks with Microsoft. And then it's this, well, how do we work around? And sometimes you have to get a little creative with it. But sometimes when it's like, okay, I need to, access, Azure Active Directory, like there probably isn't a way around that. So I would say licensing is one. Because like Power Automate Desktop, where you can actually open, physical applications on your desktop if you need to do that kind of thing, that's premium. You can get Power Automate Desktop for home computers is free for users, but for business purposes, it's part of another tiered license. So I would say that's probably the biggest one that pops into my head, to be honest. And then maybe your company, if you're working with Power Automate with the company, is your IT permissions. They may also place some limitations on what you're able to do and whatnot. So like there's a connector called File System in Power Automate that lets you access local drives like on your computer. So not OneDrive, not SharePoint related things, but things that are physically on your computer. But like my company doesn't allow us to use that. So I can't update, a file that sits on, a different drive. So that's also a limitation. Some companies may be a little bit more free spirited, but I would say those are probably the two main things that I would look to see if it's possible.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. That's not something I really thought about, because I guess with great power comes great responsibility and all that kind of thing. And,
Yes.
maybe there are some things that the security person in the back of my mind is kind of thinking, oh, well, maybe it could be used for things that don't really correspond to
Sure.
the compliance of the company. Is that something you've had to,
Yes.
kind of wrestle with?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right now, so I would say, if this is not putting too much of our business out there, but we're at a little bit of there are different groups involved, right? We put the platform in place. We have groups that are coming in now and saying, oh, we need to put some guardrails in, right? Which makes sense. Want to make sure that we're not giving out personal identifiable information for people, medical history, whatever it is, because there are some apps that during this time, folks are going to work. And there are people who are like, oh, I have a brilliant idea to make a COVID app, have people report their symptoms, but that's against company policy. And so we want to make sure that things like that aren't being used. I would say there's also for us, it's like legal, financial, IT, security permissions are really the top ones that they're looking to use. And then if it uses premium or not, because that, costs the company a little bit more money. So they want to decide, do people actually need to use X function? Does everybody need to have access to this? Because we have, I want to say it's 3,000 makers or so in the company of about 100,000, a little bit more. So not everybody is using the platform. Not everybody will make things in the platform, but they're more than likely the recipients of some part of the platform. We use a ton of Power BI. I think that's most used Power Apps. And then people don't even know sometimes they're the beneficiaries of Power Automate, just things happen and they don't know what goes on behind the scenes. But
Good
those
point.
I would say those are the considerations. And so sometimes for one of my favorite features of Power Automate is the flow bot. And it's just like a generic chat, dude, person in Teams. Power Automate is genderless, in Teams. And it's one of my favorite things to notify outside of email. And that's one of the functions that's been turned off because the folks that are assessing the uses of the platform aren't necessarily makers or users of it either.
Right.
And sometimes that translation to, when I'm talking to people above site, I'll be like, hi, do we know when we're getting this feature back? And they're like, oh, we think it has connections to something premium related. And I'm like, I don't think it does. Here's what I know about it. And here's, documentation. And they're like, maybe we'll reassess at a different time. So it's being able to translate what is useful to the other groups that are making the rules sometimes can get a little bit muddy as well. And kind of at the mercy of the people who make a little bit more than you to decisions.
So the Power Platform Admin Center has a lot of controls and it's much expanded, much improved from what it was a while ago. And there's things in there for controlling DLP rules, specifically in the Power Platform Admin Center itself, and Center of Excellence principles, that sort of thing. Is that something you get sort of involved in yourself, or you?
I don't.
You don't.
I'm not that important to have that kind of access.
Do you find that frustrating? Do you wish you had a bit more sort of say in that?
Sometimes I do. Yes, just because it would be easy to see. Because sometimes people will put, in our Facebook group that I'm having an issue with X. Can somebody help me? But I don't have the ability to go check. We can go look in their flow and troubleshoot. But if it's violated, a DLP, I won't specifically know. And then we have to reach out to somebody. But sometimes, being in a company so large, it's hard to know who's the proper contact to reach out to know exactly what that is too. So I tell people all the time, I love this platform. You come to me for help, but I have no power. So I will try to find the person who has the power. But really, I'm a builder and sort of an SME. I can give input to things for the policies that are being put in place, but oftentimes I don't have that much ability to drive, I would say, any real change.
There's a fine line between usability and security, and Rue and I are security and compliance people by nature, and we brought that line as well. It's difficult because you want users to have that great experience, but you want them to be safe and secure and compliant. So it's a balance, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, it is. I would think if I worked more in a central tech role rather than like a locally facing like data role, that might be a difference, because a colleague of mine who recently left GSK, he was working on, we have like 3 branches of the company, but he was working on our pharma like supply chain like tech side. And so for him, if I gave him like, hey, I have a concern about this, or he's like, oh, we can find the people to do that. So there are people. It's just not me. I wish it was.
Fantastic. Well, everyone's got their part to play. Absolutely. It's all teamwork. And we always say compliance is a team sport, security and compliance is a team sport. And if you work together and talk, then you should get to the end result that you want. One thing I'm interested in, actually, well, before we move on from talking purely technical and Power Platform, is in the recent sort of conference, we've had tons of conferences lately. In 2021, we've had Ignite, we've had Build, we've had Inspire recently. Have you found anything particular of yourself in viewing that content, if you have, that from a Power Platform perspective that you're excited about, that's coming, that you've thought, oh, that's great, that's really going to help me in my day-to-day role?
Ooh, in my day-to-day role, that's a good one. A lot of the things that are coming out is like updates to the, like the Center of Excellence and whatnot. I'm like, I want to get my hands on it because I want to know what all the cool kids are talking about. In one of my group chats, there are a lot of like, they're either like Microsoft employees or consultants, and we're just talking about, like, oh, like people will reach out for help in this group, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what a lot of the things that you're talking about because I don't have access to them. So nothing yet that will help me in my day-to-day role. I did love the announcement that Power Automate Desktop for home use is free, and I've not been able to explore that yet myself. But I know it would be incredibly useful if I could bring that to work. But I also do want to automate things around my home, so I need to check it out very soon. But I think that's a really big step for people to get involved. If their company may not allow them to do certain things, it allows them to play around with all of the features from the comfort of their own home.
Absolutely fantastic. Sounds great.
One thing I need to bring up, the first time I was kind of aware of your work was on Twitter, when it was Scott Hanselman tagged you in a video that Microsoft had circulated. And you know the video I'm about to say?
Yes.
I'll leave it up to you to explain it. How did you get involved in that? How did they loop you in and say, how do we actually pronounce this?
So it was the anniversary, the 10th, 11th anniversary of the cloud service for Microsoft Azure. And I hadn't seen it personally yet until a couple of friends had, they were like, hey, Azure. Like they send it, DM me on Twitter. And I was like, oh, that's really cute. And I didn't think anything of it, right? And then Scott reaches out to me and he's like, you have the final say. So can you put something together for us? And I was like, what do I say? And so Scott was like, can you give us something, within the next couple of days? And that's what I gave them. So I guess for those who don't know, it's the anniversary of the cloud service, and Scott Hanselman had put out a tweet to ask, like, how do you pronounce the cloud service, right? So I know we say it's Microsoft Azure. I pronounce my name Azure, but that's the beauty of such a versatile name is, so many people can pronounce it different ways in their language. And so there was just this whole thread of people like, with a 2-second clip of how they pronounce it. And then I got invited to actually give the final say. So if you want to look it up online, I think it's my first pinned tweet right now. My parents were tickled when it came out, and they had come to visit me, and I was like, you want to see something cool? And so my mom's going around like, can I be called Mama Cloud? And my dad's just going like, Papa Cloud. I love it.
Nice. So who would have thought all those years ago when they chose your name that it would become so so well known and so controversial insofar as how it's pronounced.
My mom, she's still convinced that Bill Gates owes her some royalties. So my joke during conferences has been, if anybody sees him, I'll be near the snack bar. Like we've got something to talk about.
Absolutely. Get some of that Bill G money.
Yeah. It's funny when. Go ahead, sorry,
I was going to say I was in Washington in the past couple of weeks and actually went by Bill Gates's house, like on, taking a boat tour through the area and passed by his house. And I was like, am I allowed to like shout at him? And the security detail, you can see his security detail, like, creeping around and make sure that nobody's pulling up real close. So
right.
From afar.
Wow. But I must admit, when I first became aware of the cloud platform some years ago now, obviously, I immediately pronounced it the way you pronounce your name. I thought, oh, this is called Azure. And then I heard Satya Nadella refer to it, and he said Azure, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, have I got that wrong? But I think what comes out of that video is that it doesn't matter. I mean, your name is Azure, but it's the platform itself can be whatever you want to call it, I guess. It's
whatever you want to be. Exactly.
Yeah, but but your name is clearly Azure, and it's like if I know I'm always talking about Star Trek on this show. I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan or not, but there's a character in Star Trek: The Next Generation called Data, and we tend to say Data in the UK, but across the pond, and you tend to say Data as a result.
Yes.
As a default rather, but the character was called Data, so there's loads of stuff like that, isn't there? Like we say aluminium, and you might say aluminum, and it just makes it more interesting, gives you something to talk about.
Yeah, and then we can joke on each other about our pronunciations for stuff, because that's always fun. My dad is Jamaican, so he pronounces aluminium, but my mom is American, so she's like, no, it's aluminum. And it's always cute to see them go on these things. I mean, it's been years now, but it's a nice joke in our household to be like, Daddy, how do you pronounce X? And he'll be like, blah, 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 and we just giggle because it's cute.
It's funny because the first time
I've watched so much American TV that I say aluminum now. It's like the culture is taken over.
Influenced by us.
I know. It's like
influenced by us.
I know. It's like the American culture just engulfing me, but
it does work that way actually. And the first time I ever heard aluminum, and I'm going to do it again here, it was actually in Star Trek. It was Star Trek 4, the one with the whales, and they used
Star Trek.
Transparent aluminum to house the whales in these tanks to transport them into the future, and I was like, what the hell are they talking about? Aluminum? What? So they mean aluminium, but but yeah, a lot of these pronunciations that do stick, you find yourself saying them and changing them, and as we're becoming a more global community with technology, I think the world's getting smaller and we're becoming more connected. You do find yourself sort of lapsing into different ways of saying things and speaking.
Absolutely.
And another example of that is the actress Gillian Anderson, most famously from the X-Files. She speaks, depending who she's talking to, she considers herself she's Canadian by birth, I think, but she's lived in London for most of her life, so she speaks with a perfect British accent. So if she's talking to a media this side of the pond, she'll speak in a British accent, and if she's across the pond, she'll sound more like Dana Scully in the X-Files, and she modifies it and confuses the heck out of some people, but I think that's really cool.
Yeah, cool and creepy, if I'm honest. You don't know which one you're doing.
But that's why she's an actress, right? Because she can have that versatility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. But no, I absolutely love that. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the community. So the wider Microsoft community is a wonderful thing, and in addition to your day job, Azure, you do give back to that community, and you speak at events such as the Scottish Summit, where you did an excellent talk. I watched that on and I encourage people to check that out, and we'll put that in the show notes. Can you sort of explain a bit about the community from your perspective and how you got into it, what it means to you, and who within it may have inspired you?
Sure. I think the community is kind of what you make it. I've had such a welcoming experience into the Power Platform community. When I first started out, like, I was working with my internal, Facebook community at work. And my friend Simon Owen, who was the head of like this whole community, he was like, I'm going to connect you to some people outside of GSK, because I wasn't very active on like Twitter for a while. Like, I was a lurker, but really didn't know how to insert myself in there, and honestly didn't even know that it really existed, let's be honest. And so Simon connected me with, her name is Foyen. Foyen runs the Textilers, which is a women in tech, but all people friendly group. You can check them out on Twitter, tech_stylers. And it's to get more like folks into tech. And so I was asked, Simon put me in contact with Foyen, and Foyen was like, why don't you do a demo for us? And I was like, what do you want me to demo? And she's like, something you've just been working on. And I presented what I had, and it opened doors for me to meet other folks in the Microsoft community. And that's when I was encouraged to do my first conference. And I was like, y'all are nuts. Why would I do a conference? I'm a baby. But it started from there, just the amount of encouragement that I've received, the amount of help. I've got a friend of mine who, anytime I need help, if I've put it in a group chat and not been able to figure out, what's going on, or somebody hasn't quite responded to it, he reaches out to me on the side and is like, hey, what do you need? Did you figure it out? And I love this spirit of collaboration, the spirit of like always being there, like assisting. There are so many user groups that people can join. Even my experience has all been through the pandemic, right? So I've only really done these virtual events too, and it's absolutely mind blowing how much is out there. So even in, I would say the greater DC area, I had met one person who was in one of the group chats that I'm in. He's Anton Benz. He works with Power Apps, but he recently moved. And so I know there are people in the area, but with the pandemic, I've just not had the opportunity to like meet up with them. But what I think makes it so cool is that it is a global community. And like if I'm putting something in the chat like late at night or on Twitter late at night, somebody's up, somebody's going to respond. So I think it's fantastic. So that's how I got introduced. I was reached out to, started with the Textilers, and many of the folks in that group were also part of wider circles. And they put out a tweet and be like, hey, welcome so-and-so to the community. And I do the same thing. If I know somebody new, I'll be like, hey, give a warm welcome to so-and-so, and here's some people you should follow. And then it kind of just starts this cycle of like, oh yeah, we want to be involved. We want to help you. Like, let us know if you have any questions. And I have to say, at one point it was a little overwhelming just to know that you are so supported on like my end. That's how I felt. And it's nice. Like, you have this family. I've only met 3 people in person in the community, and it's like there's so much more. Like, I can't wait to go to a physical conference at this point so I can actually meet them. But I feel like we're friends. Group chats are popping off all times of the night. People are sharing things on Twitter. I feel like I'm always connected to everyone. So honestly, I would say if you start, for those who want to get introduced, if you want to follow me, I can introduce you to a few people. If you want to follow a few names, I think April Dunham is one of my heroes. She works for Microsoft. She puts out fantastic videos. Eliza Benitez, she works not with Microsoft, but she puts out great content as well. Shane Young, he is phenomenal with Power Apps, if you want to get in with Power Apps. John Levesque, former Microsoft employee, but he has put out a lot of video collaborations with people who are like, let's help you explore this connector, the use of forms, the use of this, the use of that. And I know there are so many names that I could rattle off, but those I would say are the people, like, if you want to get started, like go to them. My friend Ed Gonzalez, who's on Twitter as well, he's the one who always, like, if I can't find the answer, he's like, let's hop on a call. Let's do this. So there are resources out there. Start following a few people. Look on YouTube if you're searching for something. Even there are like lesser, like people who don't have as many followers, they still put out great content. Matt Collins Jones, if you're looking for anything related to expressions, he's your man. Like he's got it. And there's always some like Easter egg like hidden in the videos that he makes. One of my favorites was some expression that we were using it might have been the use of actually it was the use of adaptive cards. And the Easter egg at the end was a shirtless picture of Jeff Goldblum, right? And he's always got something in there that never fails to make me laugh. It's wonderful. Like people are so creative in this community, and they're so happy to do it too. It warms my heart to see others wanting to contribute to this wonderful platform and always ready to help.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a bunch of gibberish, but
no, totally brilliant.
100% agree. It's you know, it's one of the myself and Pete, we only started this show, I think it was earlier this year. I don't think it was as late as last year. Sorry. I don't think it was late last year. I'm pretty sure it was early this year.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And it's short of getting married, it's like one of the best things I've ever done.
Yeah,
and meeting folks. I know, sorry, Pete, butter you up a little bit more. But it's and getting involved in the wider community, it's just so rewarding because I guess one, you find out you're not the only geek that cares about all this stuff.
My people.
Yeah, spot on. It's like I can have a conversation with someone and they don't just look at me and go like, "Huh? What?" You know, it's you can really share that experience with folks. But then, like you said, it's just how helpful everyone is. You know, folks will dedicate so much of their time to helping you out with any little problems you have, and there's always someone that has their little niche and you know exactly who to go to, and then they'll give you their time.
Yeah, you've got some real experts out there. I don't claim to know everything, and that's when I'm like, I will find somebody who has the answer. And 10 out of 10 times there is somebody who has the answer for you.
Yep.
And it's great. And if you can't, like, if you're on Twitter, can't figure out an answer, because I normally use the hashtag FlowFam, or, you know, nice. Like using it'll, I put out like the bat signal. I actually put like a bat emoji in a flashlight. That's my bat signal for people. And I'm like, FlowFam, can somebody help so-and-so, you know, figure this out? But if they can't also, you know, if they don't see it, I'll tag a few people. But also like the community forums are a wealth of knowledge too. I myself go on there when I get stuck, and people are always like ready to help you figure it out. And sometimes you'll get not one solution, but more than 1, 2, you know, 3 solutions just based off of how people have done it. And my line is there's no like one right way to flow. There can always be more than one way to do it. Some may be more efficient than others, but I would hesitate to say that there's a wrong way to do it. So when people offer multiple solutions, it's like, you know, if they're coming from a true like developer side, like if they've worked in, you know, software engineering, architecture, whatever the case is, and they've got more of a dev background outside of Power Platform, you can see like, that's how they would solve this issue, versus somebody who has maybe only seen, you know, the platform before and using, you know, like the tools that they have. So I think it's really neat to see people's different thought processes on how they solve the logic, you know, behind a problem.
Nice. And when you mention the forums are very active and things, is that the official Microsoft Tech Community forum?
Yes, correct. Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's another one that really is buzzing, and it's buzzing for everything Microsoft. You can go there and you can dive into. And I know that Pete is addicted.
I am. I tend to gravitate most to the Teams one because I don't know why exactly, but I think because as an MVP, I've sort of gravitated to those folks a bit more than other teams, shall we say? And I can't help myself. I get on there and I'll just answer this question. I'm like, I don't know about this, but I could learn it, and then I could answer it for them. And then before you know it, it's like midnight, and I'm like, gotta go to bed. And
I can relate. I was talking to some friends recently. That was one of the things we were talking about is sometimes the situation necessitates like the learning. Like you may not have all of the knowledge, but then it forces you, if you want to, right? You get curious and it's like, I've learned something, gone down this rabbit hole, figured out something new. We were talking in like relation to like me applying for like tech jobs, right, in the future. And I'm like, I don't, you know, like you don't feel ready. And they're like, you're not going to have all the skills. Nobody does. But then like when you're in that role, it's, can you figure out how to get to, you know, the solution? That's the part, right? So, the I lurk on the forums. I don't contribute because Peter, I probably would not sleep. I'd probably do the same thing. Like, oh, I have to figure out this person's issue. I have to go research it.
It becomes so addictive.
It sure does. And you look at questions and you're like, oh, I maybe know half of that answer, so let me Google the rest of it and then and then answer them. Like you said, it's whenever you're teaching someone or whenever you're helping someone, you both learn, right? Because you go away and you do that research and you figure out the answer for them. It's just that it can eat into a lot of your personal time, so you got to be careful.
Boundaries. I have I have had to force myself to stop, right? And so for work, I'm like, okay, only within working hours. And then like I have a client on the side, but then I'm like, I don't have to limit my hours because that's my personal time. But at the same time, it's like, sure, you probably should go to bed. You should leave this alone. Like, come back to it tomorrow. But then like my brain's a buzz like before bed, like I think I know how to solve this. I think I have an idea, and it's great. But like y'all said, it's addicting. It can be addicting.
Totally.
Close the computer, walk away.
And because it is a worldwide community, as you said earlier, there's always somebody awake. So no matter what time of day it is for you, I normally sleep like a baby. I normally go to bed 10:30 every night, but not too long ago I couldn't sleep for whatever reason, and I went back downstairs and I sort of tried to sleep on the sofa just so I didn't disturb my wife, and but I just couldn't, and I just thought, well, I'll see what's going on online, and ended up joining a user group in the States for a SharePoint user group with my good friend Nate Chamberlain, who's my co-author for one of the books I wrote, and I thought, oh, Nate's on this, I'll go and join that, and before I know it was 1 o'clock, and I thought, I've got to try and get some sleep. It's ridiculous. So, but it's just one thing leads to another. I can't believe the messes I get into sometimes. It's mad.
10:30. But Peter, I'm gonna say, don't hop on the computer if you can't sleep, because then you still won't sleep.
I know, I'm terrible. My wife tells me often, rightly so. She says, "Look, you've got a life. You've got to have some downtime." But I'm such an addictive personality with things like that. I find it hard to let go. It's very, very difficult. But I think I'm getting a little better.
Love, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. Because it is my job is my hobby as well. I think that's true of a lot of us who we talk to. I think it's in this community we love it so much, which is why we give it back in our own time, and we like to learn as much as we can about it. And it's just, the people are amazing. So they're so amazing. I'm constantly I go on about it a lot on this show, but I'm constantly blown away by how kind and generous they are with their time, and it's just, I've met so many people through it that I never would have met. Well, now you and Rue, of course, and everybody. It's just been a gift, absolute gift. Love it.
Yep.
I would say like the pandemic has also afforded, I would say I've been very fortunate, right? I was working from home, only needed to go into the office as necessary with manufacturing going on, and this has opened up. I think as we've had to be more online because this is our way of connecting. I don't know if I would have had the same experience just being introduced to the platform without the pandemic hitting. I don't know. Maybe so. I'm trying to think of the way that it could have gone. I would say like being encouraged to apply for conferences with them being online and like free, very accessible.
Yeah.
That was such a, like, that wasn't a limitation, right? It's I could apply for a conference here, rather than having to worry about, okay, now I have to think about accommodations or flights or how do I get there? I don't know anybody. And I think it's provided another level of like accessibility for us to be able to do this. Because I'm like, would I have met you, the both of you? Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. Who knows? Who knows?
I'm okay with the way things have worked out, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you do wonder, don't you? It's one of those sliding doors moments, isn't it? I always bring movies back into it. I don't know how I do that. But what would have happened if you'd made the train as opposed to you didn't? But Rue and I are the same. We've pretty much started our community journeys all online. I mean, I've been to conferences prior to the COVID-19 pandemic life that we're stuck in now, but it was before I was involved in it. I was just an attendee. So everything I've done has been like this. And I'm going to be honest, being a bit of an introvert that I am. I prefer it that way. I quite like it. So I think, and I'm seeing evidence of that. There's some events that are coming back to in person, but they're caring and they're catering for the people who maybe aren't ready to go back into the world. So Comsverse over here in the UK, it's a hybrid event. There's some in person, but there's some online as well. So that's really nice that that's being considered, and to give them a bit of a shout out. The team who organised that, Mark Vale and Randy Chapman and Martin Baum, they're doing a fantastic job, and they deserve real praise for it. So love to see them putting that effort in and thinking of everyone, that whole community, making it accessible for all. So important. But something I'd like to ask you is, as a woman in tech and as a woman of color in tech, how challenging has your career path been, your journey? Have you had any challenges or barriers that you've encountered that you feel comfortable sharing with us along the way? And what have you been able to do to overcome that? I'd love to hear you talk about that a bit.
I would say in tech yet, I would say that I haven't encountered many because I also don't work in tech yet. My field that I've been working in has been largely male dominated, and I've worked in pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, engineering side for about the past decade. And in that space, it is very challenging to be a woman of color. Your expertise is questioned. There's a standard that here might be the standard, but I have to perform up here to be able to meet this standard, compared to my peers. The way I come off, previously, even the way that I wore my hair, I just started wearing my hair out natural within during the pandemic. But that would be a consideration when I go for job interviews is, okay, I have to look put together, which means straightening my hair. And just being, it's the way you present yourself. You're always thinking about, and you've got industries that are oh, you need to wear makeup in order to look this way. Or if you wear makeup, you're not taken seriously in others. And it's always this okay, what do people want? Can I not just be myself? And I would say, especially as a Black woman, I even have to watch my tone of voice, because if I am, a statement that somebody could say would be seen as fine, but if I say it might be seen as aggressive rather than assertive. And at one of my first jobs, I would not put smiley faces in my emails. And apparently, if I put a smiley face, it means I'm disarming. And in my role, I was one of few women. And it was a very, I was being professional. So I didn't put smiley faces in there, a million exclamation points. And a manager actually pulled me aside because some of the men in the group were she seems aggressive, when I would just be asking for things or asking why this isn't done. And I was told, and I understand the sentiment, right? That she's oh, in order to get your way, sometimes you have to play dumb. And I was ooh, I don't like this. I really, really don't the way that I have to present myself is a way that isn't aggressive, isn't domineering. But that's just being a Black woman, that's how things come off. And I would say that's a challenge, right? Because I'm not being those things. Or if I speak up about something, I'm seen as nagging. And honestly, at this rate, I feel comfortable enough to still speak up, to still do what I do. And if that's how I come off, the perception of me is, it's not my responsibility to control other folks' perception of me. That's just the conclusion that I've come to over, the past couple of years is I'm still going to be me. I am, polite. I get my job done well. I understand I have to meet way higher standards in order to see even, as the basic minimum. It's rough out here. It is very rough out here. It's something that's always on my mind, and still to perform through all of that, to get the job done. It's what needs to be done. I know with within the past year, with the global like BLM movement, and folks being more aware of like what minorities go through, what women go through. Women are speaking up. I would like to see a change, and I think it's starting to get there a little bit, right? That now, even if we have supporters, and I have found, I would say in this community in particular, I have found nothing but allies, which I think is phenomenal. And I think maybe being a global community has something to do with that. I can't speak for the larger tech community because I have read things about being in tech as a woman, as a person of color. But I would say for Power Platform, thus far, my experience has been very positive. I'm still also looking for people who look like me, though, too. And I would love to see more people of color in tech. And it could also be that they're just not, they don't have an online presence. But in my current role, so I'm still kind of doing part of my old role, doing this, job as a data scientist, and I am the only Black woman, the only Black person like in my group for data science. And the manager, though, however, of the department, because we're under the Department of Engineering, when I was applying for the role, when he came in, he had very big ideas, wonderful ideas. He's like, I want to see more, I want to see more women in engineering. If I'm not mistaken, in our whole department, there's like four women. And he's like, no, we want more women. We want to equal the gender parity. We want to bring more people of color into this space. Like, this is what we want to do. We want this makeup to be like more equitable, to provide opportunities for people. So it warms my heart to hear that, like, okay, like I am valuable. Like there are people who want to help me rather than think like, oh, she's aggressive or, whatever fill in the box is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's easy. Like we can always make judgments about people before we know them or, come up with these preconceived notions, and they're not always the healthiest thing.
Yeah, yeah. And it's an interesting comment you made about how you haven't experienced that thus far anyway in the community. And it's a good point insofar as one of the things that kind of struck out to me is you felt like you kind of had to, you didn't want to change the way you were in order to buy folks' perceptions. You know what I mean? They can perceive you however they want to, and that's on them, right? One of the things that inspires me when we talk about community and things, it's like, well, all these guys, all these folks in the community, they've got your back at the end of the day. They accept you for who you are, and nobody cares. We need to be outcome driven, right? We can't let folks' identities change anything to do with that. We have to judge folks based on the quality of the work that they're putting out there, right?
I agree. Yep. I would like to see definitely more of this, rather than like the image, right? Because I was watching the interview with Holly that you all did recently.
Yeah.
And and everything that she was saying, I was like, she's got it. She knows exactly what it's like. And I was like, I know we are not alone in the way that we feel. And I was like, I can't speak for other women or other sectors of tech, but at least the folks that I've been surrounded with, from what I can tell in our interactions, like they have my back, and it feels very welcoming and reassuring to know that, wow, like this is legit. I don't know if I've ever felt like this supported in like a professional community before, like professional turned family-ish, regardless of where people come from, what their status is at their company. Like I feel like, an equal among everyone.
I'm glad you mentioned Holly, actually, and a big shout out to Holly, if you're watching. I know you do watch, because she's a dear friend of the show. And on her episode, it makes me really, really mad that a quarter of the way through the 21st century, we're still having discussions. As Holly mentioned in her show, she was called out for wearing too much makeup, and I'm like, what? What's all that about? Why are we having these conversations still. It frustrates the heck out of me. So it's crucial that we speak up for each other, that we are allies, that we support, and we don't allow this to happen, and we encourage accessibility and diversity. And
Yes.
I hope we're going in the right direction. I truly do. I think we are in our own community, but there's still work to be done.
There is, yeah, and it's a conscious effort, right, on behalf of all of us to make that happen. You know, having discussions about like empathy and making sure that we're inclusive, and it's work. It absolutely is work, but it's a necessary work that we need to do in order to make sure that we are creating an environment where everybody can not just be there, right? It's not even like a seat at the table. It's like making sure, or the example is that I've heard, it's not inviting the person to a dance, it's inviting an individual to dance, right? So that they're not a wallflower. And so that's like we want to make sure everybody has that opportunity to boogie oogie on the, you know, the dance floor, so to speak.
Absolutely. And we can all learn something from each other. Everyone can learn something from each other. And that's what we've got to strive towards, without a doubt. So a little bit of aspirations for humanity there. Hopefully we're a work in progress, I think, aren't we? And I hope we're making strides. But,
I appreciate you bringing this into the conversation too. This is the first time that, maybe not the first, maybe the second time, but normally like some of these discussions don't quite happen about like, what's your experience as a Black woman and, you know, like your industry in tech. So I appreciate you all not shying away from asking like the experiences of those in the community. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's too important not to. It doesn't matter if it's if you're in that position and you feel it's too uncomfortable to ask, it shouldn't be, because it's important. It has to be discussed. It has to, and we have to make progress on these issues. They're too important to ignore. That's how I feel about it anyway. And so thank you very much for saying that, Azure. I appreciate it. I called you Azure.
I didn't even notice.
Thank you, Azure. But oh dear, what am I like? I always make one goofy mistake on every show. My wife tells me that the older I get, the more like my dad I become, the more sort of awkward and then she's right. She's right. So
there is an American insurance company. I think it's Progressive, but they do these commercials about like how to have people not turn into their parents, and they are hysterical. They've got so many. It's like lessons on how not to be your dad, or the people are turning into their dad, or you know, or their mom. And it's so if you have a chance, look them up on YouTube and you want to laugh one day, look those.
I'll love to do that, definitely.
I think I've seen that. The guy's walking around a shop with his dad or something like that, and he's keeping him right, and he's buying old man polo shirts and stuff like that. But,
you see him like pull up his pants like up like his dad too, like wearing it very high waisted, and they're a trip.
And there's nothing wrong with being like my dad. I love my dad.
There is nothing wrong. I love, as I'm getting older, I'm like, I can see why older people do this, because it's so liberating, right? Like that once I turned 30, I was like, oh, people's opinions don't really matter, do they? I was like, this is refreshing. Just keep living your life, you know? I mean, be a good person, but I'm thinking like, some of these things don't matter anymore. And I'm like, is this wisdom of the ages? I like it. So I'm okay with getting older and being like my mom. That works for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, it comes to us all. It is the one talent we all share. But anyhow, looking at the time, we can't take up too much of your valuable time, but we do have a couple of questions that we must get through. First and foremost, what do you like to do in your spare time, if you have any?
Ooh, spare time. So
Power automate.
Right.
Yeah.
I am an amateur baker. I like to bake. My thing has been recreating things from the Great British Bake Off. That has been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
I hear that show is massive over there, which always surprises me when anything from our side of the pond makes it big in the States. It's apparently huge, isn't it?
it's wholesome reality TV, and it's just like you want to root for everyone, and you feel their pain when their recipe doesn't work out right, and you're like, you want to see them succeed, and I love that show. I'm an amateur baker. I'm a runner. During the pandemic, races have gone virtual, and I'm not. I don't know. There's something about like being with a crowd that really like amps you up. So I run. I'm a cellist. So I've played cello for about 20 years. And so just to keep my connection to the music right now, I take lessons every other week out of a local art center over Zoom. And yeah, so that's try to sleep.
Yeah. Is the cello a difficult instrument to learn?
Good question.
10, 11-year-old me would say yes. As an adult though, they're so like I'm a member of the Reddit community and belong to the cello sub, and there are a lot of adults that are picking up cello, and there's so many resources now. Like, I mean, I still have my elementary like strings books. And YouTube, I feel like YouTube makes it really easy. I know the big thing for several years was like learning guitar. And I'm like, if you can find a YouTube video on cello, like there's a wealth of resources. I would say it's not easy because you got to practice, but it's not impossible.
Interesting. Yeah. Have you ever been interested in picking up any other instruments, or is that the one for you?
So I was a music education major and performance major in college at one point. And so I very rudimental, like enough to teach elementary school strings, because we would do group lessons for kids in the community. They would come to the college, we teach them twice a week, and then I would do private lessons. So I've learned the other string instruments enough to teach like elementary school level. So strings, yes, and a little bit of piano, but not proficiently enough to give you a concert beyond like Mary Had a Lamb and Twinkle Twinkle. So when I was, in ed major, we had to take, it was an adult elementary school like band, and it was all the students who were ed majors had to learn instruments different from their primary instrument. So I was like learning clarinet. Right. It's hard. It was really hard. It's a bunch of adults that sound like 10-year-olds or 8-year-olds trying to play an instrument that isn't theirs. But because we didn't know if we would end up like in a school that offered strings or a school that offered band, you had to be a little bit versatile in what you taught, just in case. But that was fun. Clarinet was very hard. Woodwinds, I applaud folks who play woodwinds, because anything with a reed to me is very difficult. But yeah.
Awesome, good stuff. Yeah, I think bagpipes. Do bagpipes technically fall under woodwind? I think they would. They've got a reed. Yeah, that must fall under woodwind.
It hurts. It hurts I'm sure maybe I was doing it wrong. Maybe I needed to do more practice. But like your whole mouth just hurts. It just I think of pain when I think of woodwind instruments.
Oh, I've got to say, I love bagpipes, though. I think they're one of those things that you either love or hate, and I love them, and my wife hates them. But I just think they're so wonderful.
I won't take it personally, but yeah, that's okay.
I don't hate them. I really don't. That's my opinion for now.
Yeah, you can live with them.
They're an instrument, right? There are some sounds that are more pleasant to the ears, and I would say bagpipes isn't one of those ones where I would steer away from.
Yeah, it has to be the right song, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It has to be the right emotion and everything, because they can be quite emotional.
That is true.
Because I think over in the States they're really heavily associated with funerals over your side of the pond, aren't they? I feel like every time I watch an American movie and there's a funeral, there's some bagpipes.
You know what? You are not wrong. We need to change the perception of bagpipes over in America. I'm gonna go on Twitter and start my campaign.
There you go. Excellent.
Yes.
Yep. Free the pipes. Yep. I guess so. One other question, obligatory question for our show, and I have a feeling I know where the answer is going to go for this anyway, but we always have to ask everyone. Out of the only two Terminator movies that count, Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, do you have a favorite?
I haven't seen Terminator 2, and Terminator 1 was a very long time ago. Don't hate me, I'm bad at pop culture.
There is no right or wrong answer.
Okay, I'm going to say Terminator 1 just because I haven't seen Terminator 2. But I will promise you, I'm going to go watch Terminator 2. I'm going to put it on this never-ending list of movies that I haven't seen, but it'll be at the top.
Excellent.
There you go. It's probably very easy to find. It's going to be on Netflix or Amazon Prime or some such thing to stream quite easily, I would imagine.
I will find it.
Yeah.
You know, I was hosting a movie night throughout the pandemic, like a virtual movie night with a bunch of girlfriends. And so every Sunday, it was a nice way to start the week because it was a very relaxing thing. And if I watch things on my own, oftentimes I'll get kind of distracted. So maybe we'll do the Terminator series for our next movie nights.
Awesome. There you go. Good stuff. The crazy thing is I'm not even a big fan of Terminator, but for some reason it's just kind of worked its way into the show.
It's sort of stuck, hasn't it? Yeah. It was Rudy Ooms. It was all his fault when he was on the show. It spread from there. And I think on most shows we've remembered to ask it. I think there's only a couple of times we've forgotten. But I think Terminator 1's in the lead now, actually. Which,
it is, much to my horror. Yeah.
I don't think either of us thought it would be, but for various reasons. But we've never had it win by default before because nobody had seen the second one, so that's new.
Oh, okay, I feel special.
You absolutely. But movies are so great though, and they bring people together, and it's just reminded me of something that way back when I used to do with some friends. This is years ago, before I was married. Even we used to have some friends around to my flat, my apartment, and everyone used to bring a DVD or and we had a clips night, and everyone would select a 5-minute clip from a movie that they loved and sort of set it up and introduce it and say why they loved it, what it meant to them, and it was such a good event to do. So we've got to bring back clips night. I absolutely love that.
That's a good idea.
I like that a lot. That's like Bookstagram. I don't know if so on Instagram there's a whole like book community, and there are a couple of accounts I follow where they'll like read excerpts from a book and then give like a 2-minute plot summary, and it always draws me in because I'm like, now I have to read it. I think that's such a neat way to get people into movies. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. And I got introduced to a ton of stuff that I wouldn't necessarily have known about or watched. So it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Let's find a way to do that again. But there you go. But
good idea.
Azure, thank you so much indeed for joining us today. It's been an utter delight to meet you and to talk to you. And is there anything, before we go, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers today? And can you let them know how they can find you?
Sure. Everybody just get started. I forgot to put the @ in front of my name, but find me on Twitter. My handle is down here.
I love that. AMAC underscore and cheese. Love it.
Because my last name is McFarlane, so that's mac and cheese. Find me on Twitter. Get started. Get your developer account. If you need help, like #TheFlowFam, you can @ me. We'll get you introduced into this community. I think one of the I know like getting started as a beginner, there are so many applications. It can be hard. I've got some conference segments on YouTube that'll help you get like started from the beginning, like walk you through the Power Automate website. If you want to do that, not for a personal plug, but I understand how it can be hard maybe to find like where to get actually started. Find a use case that you want to start with or an application. Don't be scared, dive right in. The water's warm. Everybody is here to help. So yeah, thank you both very much for having me today. It was a pleasure to meet you in face-to-face instead of just over text on Twitter. So,
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Great pleasure seeing you.
Brilliant.
We'll wrap up the show then, Pete, I guess.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's put this episode to bed. Let's remind everybody that they can follow us on Twitter at CloudRuinPete. Check us out on YouTube. Give that bell notification thing a tickle because that helps, and subscribe if you can because that helps too. We're not hard to find. If you want to talk, reach out, say hello, and let's have a chat. It's as Azure said, it's a wonderful community, and it's good to talk. So thanks for joining us. Thank you, my friend Rue, as always. Thank you, Azure. It's been absolutely lovely to talk to you. We'll see you on the next time on Cloud Conversations with Rue and Pete. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.